Hi, I am a servant of King Jesus Christ, and every action I take is for the glory of God and His coming kingdom. Jesus Christ died for me so that I could live for Him and be a shepherd and martyr of His word and help win souls to Him. My name is Simeon Frank, and that is why I do what I do. That is who I am and why I do what I do. So, there is a ton going on in the world right now, especially America. You've heard all of your favorite celebrities talk about it. You've heard all of your favorite or least favorite politicians talk about it. You see all the different social media platforms and the different apps and your different friends posting all of these different things about the riots and the injustice and Blackout Tuesday. You've seen it all. And I'm sure you've seen a ton of Christian people talking about how to handle it. But here's something that I haven't heard. Does God care about what's going on? Obviously. But specifically, does God care about politics? I pose this question because it's important to know God's standpoint on what's going on today. But not only that, I know a lot of churches, and the church has taken a position in the past. Let's stay out of politics. Let's let the world handle this. Let's let the secular folk handle this. And let's just be the church. A church, at least. So, does God care about politics? Let's start in Ezekiel, okay? We are in Ezekiel chapter 11, verses 2 through 4. The Lord said to me, Son of man, these are the men who are plotting evil and giving wicked advice in this city. They say, will it not be soon time to build houses? This city is a cooking pot, and we are the meat. Therefore prophesy against them, son of man. Prophesy, son of man. Right off the bat, we see in detail that God is telling Ezekiel to speak to their specific plans about housing in Egypt. If that's not politics, I don't know what is. So we, right off the bat, see that God cares about politics, right? But that's not all, okay? Next, let's head over to 1 Kings chapter 21, verses 17 through 26. Okay. It reads, the word of the Lord came to Elijah the Tishbite. Go down to meet Ahab, king of Israel, who rules in Samaria. He is now in Naboth's vineyard, where he has gone to take possession of it. Say to him, this is what the Lord says. Have you not murdered a man and seized his property? Then say to him, this is what the Lord says. In the place where dogs licked up Naboth's blood, dogs will lick up your blood. Yes, yours. Ahab said to Elijah, so you have found me, my enemy. I have found you, he answered, because you have sold yourself to do evil in the eyes of the Lord. I am going to bring disaster on you. I'll consume your descendants and cut off from Ahab every last male in Israel, slave or free. I'll make your house like that of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, and that of Baasha, son of Ahijah, because you have provoked me to anger and have caused Israel to sin. And also concerning Jezebel, the Lord says, dogs will devour Jezebel by the wall of Jezreel. Dogs will eat those belonging to Ahab who die in the city, and the birds of the air will feed on those who die in the country. There was never a man like Ahab, who sold himself to do evil in the eyes of the Lord, urged on by Jezebel his wife. He behaved in the vilest manner by going after idols, like the Amorites the Lord drove out before Israel. I'm gonna let that one sink in. That's pretty rough. That's pretty heavy, yeah? But you see, God cared about what the king of Israel was doing to his people. God is the ruler of the universe. He will always have something to say in the ruling kingdoms of the world. And you see, with Ahab, he was a wicked man, and his wife Jezebel was just as wicked as he, if not worse. So God is telling Elijah, tell them what I got to say about this. I've got something to say. And all of this came to pass. You might say some of this is violent, but the point here is that God cares. All right? Now, let's over to Mark chapter 10, verses 2 through 12. Okay. It reads, some Pharisees came and tested him by asking, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife? What did Moses command you? He asked. They said, Moses permitted a man to write a certificate of divorce and send her away. It was because your hearts were hard that Moses wrote you this law, Jesus replied. But at the beginning of creation, God made them male and female. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one. Therefore, what God has joined together, let man not separate. When they were in the house again, the disciples asked Jesus about this. He answered, anyone who divorces his wife and marries another woman commits adultery against her. And if she divorces her husband and marries another man, she commits adultery. So what I want you to get here is that the Pharisees, the ruling party that was already there, that had already established the laws, came and tested Jesus himself and said, what do you think? Trying to trick him, of course. But see, not only did Jesus tell them what he thought about the law, but in fact, he put down a new law that we should follow today. Okay, not only did he tell them, it was because your hearts were hard that Moses wrote you this law, but he also said, anyone who divorces his wife and marries another woman commits adultery. In the same way, and if she divorces her husband and marries another man, she commits adultery. That's politics. The Pharisees were the ruling party. The Pharisees, they had the law of Moses. They might have made their adjustments to it, but either way, they had the law. They held the law. God always holds the law, but in their minds, they held the law. That was politics. They were the rulers and leaders of Israel in that time. But Jesus came, and he had something to say about that. He gave a reason for the current law, and he gave a new one. Okay? Now, let's hit Matthew chapter 23, verses 1 through 33. Pretty long, huh? All right. Yes. So I only read a part of this because these are woes, but this goes to prove that Jesus knew the wickedness of the Pharisees and he spoke out about it, just like a lot of our leaders today. So listen. Then Jesus said to the crowds and to his disciples, the teachers of the law and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. So you must obey them and do everything they tell you. But do not do what they do, for they do not practice what they preach. They tie up heavy loads and put them on men's shoulders, but they themselves are not willing to lift a finger to move them. Everything they do is done for men to see. They make their phylacteries wide and the tassels on their garments long. They love the place of honor at banquets and the most important seats in the synagogues. They love to be greeted in the marketplace and to have men call them rabbi. But you are not to be called rabbi, for you only have one master and you are all brothers. And do not call anyone on earth father, for you have one Father and he is in heaven. Nor are you to be called teacher, for you have one teacher, the Christ. The greatest among you will be your servant. For whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You shut the kingdom of heaven in men's faces. You yourselves do not enter, nor will you let those enter who are trying to. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You travel over land and sea to win a single convert, and when he becomes one, you make him twice the son of hell as you are. Wow. Still don't think God cares about politics? Still don't think kind Jesus has something to say about what's going on in the world? He does. And we as God's people have a responsibility to carry that. Now, just to illustrate this scripture in a little bit more context, okay? Jesus is pronouncing woes upon the Pharisees. He's calling out their wicked actions and their wicked hearts. We can make many parallels like that today. So many men are wicked. So many children So many women, so many people are wicked. It's not so much the point that we as Christians sit down and point the finger, you're wicked, you're wicked. We are not the judge. That's Jesus' job. But we have to recognize who they are. We have to recognize the injustices that are happening and the people behind them, just like Jesus did here. And what I also want you to see is that Jesus gave instructions to us as Christians. He gave instructions to his followers. Okay? He said, "You are not to be called a rabbi, for you have only one master, and you are all brothers. And do not call anyone on earth father, for you have no father, and he is in heaven." That point goes to show that Jesus wants us to say something. Jesus commanded us to be held to his standard. Not only are we just recognizing the injustice that's happening, not only are we just being like Jesus and recognizing wickedness, but we are also applying this by God's standard. We are applying this by the standard of Jesus Christ. And that standard is found right here. He gave us a standard. He said, you don't need to be called teacher. You don't need to call anybody else your father. And the same way today, when all that's going on around the world, when we look at politics, we have to look at it like God looks at it. We got to get out of our human mind and say, what does God think? Let me go to the Word and see what God says about politics, what he thinks about what's happening in the world. Do you think he would agree on what's going on in the White House or the Kremlin or any other, political stronghold in the world? You can look and you can judge for yourself, but you've got to go about judging it. And judging, I use that term lightly, but you've got to go about discerning it and taking action the way God would. So I don't want to see you rioting in these streets. And when I say rioting, yes, go out there, protest, stand up for what's right, stand up against injustice. But I don't want to see you throwing no bricks in the windows. I don't want to see you shooting at the cops. I don't want to see you out there acting a fool. I want to see you out there being an ambassador for Jesus Christ. I want to see you out there applying God's standard to what happens and not your own and not the world's. I want to see you going out there with a strong voice saying God has got something to say about what's going on, and do it with love. Be stern, be powerful. They ain't going to listen to you, but you're doing it for God. So, I've answered this question 1,000,000,000 times, but just to close it out, does God care about politics? Absolutely, he does. Are we supposed to govern ourselves like God does when it comes to politics? Absolutely, we are. And what does that mean? That means discerning and recognizing evil and good. That means seeing what's going on in the world and not just watching it and understanding it, but taking a stand just like Jesus did. Taking a stand just like God told his prophets to do and God did himself. We have authority on this earth. We are the sons and daughters of God, and we are supposed to strive to be perfect like him. So let's do that. Let's go out here, let's recognize what's good and what's bad, and let's hold it to God's standard of right. Not the world's standard, not your standard, God's standard. God cares about politics, and he certainly cares about you. All right. Thanks for sticking it out with me. You guys have a good one. God bless.